The U.S. Navy has one rule: do not touch our boats. At 0847 hours on March 15, 1952, a small team of North Korean soldiers made a fatal mistake. They touched the boat. They pointed artillery at a U.S. Navy warship. 10 men, one ancient artillery piece, and absolutely no idea what was about to happen. The coastal waters off Kosong, North Korea, were calm that morning. Visibility was 12 miles. Perfect weather for what would become a very bad day for the Koreans. The artillery team had dragged their Soviet-made 152mm howitzer up a coastal hill. It weighed 7,000 pounds. They set it up at an elevation of 400 feet. From there, they could see something massive on the horizon. A gray silhouette, moving at 15 knots along the coast. The team leader squinted through his binoculars. He saw a ship, a big one, but that wasn't just any ship. That was the USS Wisconsin, and she was about to literally reshape the Korean peninsula. The stakes couldn't be higher. Any US casualties could escalate tensions. The Korean War was already a powder keg. One wrong move could drag China deeper into the conflict, or worse. The North Korean artillery team was feeling confident. They had the high ground, 400 feet of elevation advantage, classic artillery positioning from 1,000 years of warfare. The morning sun warmed their backs. The smell of gunpowder hung in the crisp air. They had trained for this moment. Their 152mm howitzer was Soviet-made, reliable. It could throw a 100-pound shell over 17 kilometers. The team leader calculated the firing solution. Wind speed, 8 knots from the northeast. Target distance, approximately 16 kilometers. The math looked good. What the team leader didn't calculate was probability. The probability of hitting a moving target at 10 miles with a 1940s artillery piece was nearly zero. We're talking about a ship moving at 15 knots. That's 25 feet every second. By the time your shell travels 10 miles, the target has moved hundreds of feet. It's like trying to hit a speeding car with a thrown baseball from a mile away. But probability has a sense of humor, and today it was about to make the worst joke in North Korean military history. Meanwhile, the Wisconsin was on what the Navy called a routine patrol. Except nothing was routine about this mission. Her orders, pulled directly from naval archives, were to destroy railway tracks and surrounding mountains. Yes, mountains. The U.S. Navy was so powerful in 1952, they were literally assigned to fight geography. The crew of 1,921 sailors treated this like any other Tuesday. The ship's Mark 13 fire control radar swept the coastline. Every 4 seconds, it completed a full rotation. The radar operators tracked everything within 40,000 yards. Fishing boats, coastal fortifications, and yes, a small group of soldiers dragging something up a hill. One radar man reported the activity to the bridge. "Sir, we've got movement on the coastal ridge. Looks like they're setting up something. Maybe artillery." The executive officer glanced at the captain. His coffee mug paused halfway to his lips. "Artillery?" The XO almost laughed. "Are they lost?" "Probably sightseeing. They won't shoot." This was a reasonable assumption. No sane artillery crew would fire on the Wisconsin. It would be like poking a sleeping tiger with a stick made of steak. The tiger might wake up, and the tiger was definitely going to be hungry. But sanity was not on the menu that morning. Let's talk about what the North Koreans were aiming at. The USS Wisconsin wasn't a ship. She was a floating monument to American industrial dominance, a steel cathedral of firepower that displaced 58,000 tons fully loaded. To put that in perspective, that's heavier than 500 fully loaded 18-wheelers. Her dimensions were obscene. Length, 887 feet. That's nearly 3 football fields laid end to end. Width, 108 feet across the beam. From the perspective of that North Korean hill, she looked like a floating city of gray steel and American attitude. The smell of fuel oil and salt spray surrounded her hull. Her wake churned white foam across the dark Korean waters. But her size wasn't what made her dangerous. Her guns did. The Wisconsin carried 9 16-inch 50 caliber Mark 7 naval guns. They were mounted in 3 triple turrets. Each gun barrel was 67 feet long. That's longer than a school bus. The bore diameter diameter was exactly 16.1 inches. You could crawl inside if you were stupid enough to try. These guns were engineering perfection. Each Mark 7 gun weighed 239,000 pounds without the breech mechanism. The entire turret assembly, including armor, mechanisms, and the rotating structure, weighed 1,700 tons. Moving one of these turrets required 300 horsepower electric motors. The North Korean artillery team had none of this. They had a 1940s howitzer, some hand calculations, and approximately 7 minutes left to live. At 0912 hours, the impossible happened. The North Korean artillery team fired their first round. The 152mm shell arced through the morning air. It flew for 47 seconds across 10 miles of open water toward a moving target traveling at 25 feet per second. The probability of hitting was approximately 1 in 10,000. They hit. The shell struck the Wisconsin superstructure. The impact was sharp, metallic. One sailor on the bridge described it as a faint tink, like someone had dropped a wrench on the deck 3 compartments away. Then came the shout, "Captain, we've been hit!" The damage control party scrambled. Smoke rose from the impact site. The smell of burning paint and hot metal filled the corridor. 3 sailors were down, wounded by shrapnel, not dead, but bleeding. For one brief moment, the bridge was silent. The North Korean artillery team had just accomplished something remarkable. They had hit a U.S. Navy warship from 10 miles away with 1940s technology. It was genuinely impressive. A 1 in a million shot that defied mathematics and physics. On that hill, celebration erupted. High fives, backslaps. The team leader probably felt like a hero. This would be legendary. Stories would be told. Medals would be awarded. The excitement tasted like victory. The adrenaline pumped. Their hearts raced. They had no idea their celebration would last approximately 180 seconds, because on the Wisconsin's bridge, something shifted. The captain's expression changed. His jaw tightened. His eyes narrowed to steel slits. The temperature inside that bridge dropped 10 degrees without the air conditioning moving. He turned to his gunnery officer. "You see that hill?" "Yes, sir." "I don't want to." "Understood, sir." Those 6 words sealed their fate. The stakes were suddenly personal. 3 American sailors were wounded. Blood had been drawn. The ship had been touched. And the Wisconsin had a strict policy about ship touching. You touch our ship, that's the last thing you touch. The entire crew felt the shift, from routine patrol to something else, something primal, something angry. The Wisconsin's fire control team moved with precision. The Mark 38 system locked onto the hill. The Mark 13 radar painted the target with radio waves. The bearing was calculated. The range was measured. 16,200 yards, just under 10 miles. In the main battery director, the fire control officer watched through his optics. The hill filled his viewfinder. He could see the smoke from their artillery piece. He could see small figures moving. They were probably still celebrating. "Solution ready!" he announced. Down in Turret 1, the gun crew waited. The turret officer's voice crackled through the intercom. "Load all guns!" The loading sequence began. First, the 2,700-pound shell lifted from the handling room. A hydraulic hoist carried it up through the magazine. The breech closed. The ready light illuminated. In 47 seconds, 1 turret was loaded. Then Turret 2, then Turret 3. 9 guns, 9 shells. The smell of hydraulic fluid mixed with gun oil. The hum of the electric motors filled the turret spaces. On that North Korean hill, the artillery team reloaded. They were preparing their second shot. They had no idea time had run out. Their radio was silent. Their radar was non-existent. They had no warning. They were about to receive a response, and that response would be disproportionate. Very, very disproportionate. At 0917 hours, the Wisconsin spoke. All 9 Mark 7 guns fired simultaneously. The sound was not a bang. It was a physical force, a shockwave that shattered windows 5 miles away. The muzzle blast created a fireball 300 feet in diameter. The overpressure wave compressed the air so hard, water droplets formed in the atmosphere. The shock traveled through the steel hull. Every sailor felt it in their bones. The deck jumped. 9 shells left 9 barrels at 2,500 feet per second. They climbed 10,000 feet, 20,000 feet, 35,000 feet. At the apex of their arc, they were higher than commercial airliners. 9 metal Volkswagens, hanging in the sky, then falling. Flight time, 62 seconds. On the hill, the North Korean team heard nothing. Sound travels slower than artillery shells. They loaded their second round. They calculated their next shot. They had no idea end was already inbound. Then the shells arrived. The first impact erased the artillery piece. 2,700 pounds of steel and explosive traveling at 2,000 feet per second converted the Soviet howitzer into a memory. The crater was 40 feet wide and 15 feet deep. Impact 2 struck the ammunition storage. The secondary explosions lit up the hillside. Impacts 3 through 9 systematically disassembled the hill. The overpressure wave flattened everything within 200 feet. The ground itself shook from the impacts. The artillery team ceased to exist in any meaningful form. But the Wisconsin wasn't done. The captain ordered reloads. The loading crews worked like machines. Shell, powder, ram, close, ready. The turrets rotated slightly, adjusting aim, widening the impact zone. The second salvo fired. 9 more shells. 20,700 more pounds of ordnance, this time targeted not at the artillery position, but at the hill itself. The shells impacted along the ridgeline. Each detonation removed tons of earth and rock. The geology changed with every impact. Third salvo, fourth salvo. By the fifth salvo, the hill wasn't a hill anymore. The smoke cloud rose 5,000 feet into the air. The smell of cordite and burning earth drifted across the water. Where there had been a 400-foot hill, there was now a 200-foot depression. The escort ship USS Duncan had watched the entire display. Her crew stood on deck, mouths open. They had just witnessed a battleship throw a tantrum. The message from the Duncan's captain arrived moments later over radio. Whoa! Temper! Temper! The Wisconsin's radio officer laughed so hard he choked on his coffee. On the Wisconsin's bridge, the captain surveyed the smoke cloud. The hill was gone. The artillery team was gone. The problem was very, very gone. A junior sailor approached the captain. His voice trembled slightly. Sir, are we going to get in trouble for, rearranging their coastline? The captain didn't even turn around. Son, when the Navy says don't touch our boats, we mean it. We just clarified the policy. The 3 wounded sailors were treated in sick bay. All 3 survived. The North Korean artillery team received no medals. They received no recognition. They received a crater and the satisfaction of knowing they had accomplished the world's unluckiest shot. Naval analysts later studied the incident. They estimated the probability of that hit at less than 0.01%. One shot in 10,000. The North Koreans had won the worst lottery in military history. The region's cartographers were indeed annoyed. Maps had to be redrawn. Elevation surveys had to be recalculated. The hill that had stood for 10,000 years had been erased in 6 minutes. The incident became legend in naval circles. It became a reminder. If you're going to poke a 58,000-ton bear, make sure you understand the consequences. Because the bear carries 9 16-inch guns, and the bear holds grudges. The Wisconsin sent a message. Don't touch our boats. The USS Wisconsin was decommissioned in 1991. She now rests as a museum ship in Norfolk, Virginia. Her guns are silent, but her legend lives on.